The 25th of January, 2026, 7:58 p.m. Washington time, a polar vortex described as a once-in-a-century cold wave is tearing across the United States. This is not merely a weather disaster, as roughly 50,000 Americans take to the streets of Minneapolis in temperatures plunging to CIT 23 degrees Celsius. A perfect storm where climate, politics, and public trust collide has already made landfall. At the same moment, Trump is posting on social media from Mar-a-Lago. He may not yet realize that a deep stress test of America's system of governance has begun. The crisis presents itself in three layers. The first is the extreme weather itself. More than 170 million people affected, 18 states under emergency declarations, and tens of thousands of flights canceled. But the real flashpoint lies in an acronym: ICE. The abbreviation for US Immigration and Customs Enforcement happens to be the same word as ICE, to avoid the public associating cold weather alerts with this highly controversial agency. The Federal Emergency Management Agency reportedly instructed staff to avoid using the word ICE, opting instead for vaguer terms like freezing rain. This near absurd act of linguistic self-censorship exposes a deeper problem. When a government begins to fear its own acronyms, its credibility has already begun to erode. Internal warnings noted that sacrificing clarity in weather alerts for the sake of political sensitivity would only place the public at greater risk. The second layer is a government shutdown risk estimated as high as 75%. Political prediction markets indicate that once the current budget runs out, the likelihood of a U.S. government shutdown is extremely high. Establishment Democrats and progressive factions are locked in a hard standoff over whether to continue funding immigration enforcement agencies. Senator Elizabeth Warren has gone so far as to say that ICE should not receive one more dollar, accusing its enforcement practices of resembling acts of terror. Trump's response, by contrast, has been to double down on social media, publicly defending ICE's hardline stance. The third layer is a critical timeline largely ignored by mainstream narratives. This is not a coincidence, but a resonance between natural forces and political dynamics. As early as August 2025, a World Meteorological Organization report warned that changes in Arctic circulation could make outbreaks of cold air more likely. In October, the EU's Climate Agency confirmed that 2025 was the third hottest year on record, with the global average temperature over the past 3 years exceeding the pre-industrial baseline by more than 1.5 degrees Celsius for the first time. Yet by January 2026, Trump was using the cold snap to publicly cast doubt on global warming itself. The disconnect between scientific warnings and political denial laid the groundwork for the crisis now unfolding. This cold wave has forced parts of the U.S. public sector to rely on deliberately vague language in issuing warnings. And once precise language is abandoned, the capacity for governance grounded in scientific fact is effectively weakened. It becomes a self-reinforcing cycle. The more vague the language, the more truth must be obscured. The more truth is obscured, the more reliance there is on exceptional measures. While public attention remains fixed on domestic political infighting, the global balance of power is quietly shifting in the background. The real winner may be climate reality itself. It has forced hundreds of millions of people to experience extreme weather firsthand, while strengthening rather than weakening the scientific consensus on climate change within the G20. This, in effect, sounds a possible death knell for the wave of climate denial policies spreading across parts of the Western world. At the same time, U.S. credibility has suffered a visible tear A country that commands the world's most powerful military is now witnessing its own citizens openly stating that science is more reliable than politics. That sentiment strikes at a long-held assumption that military supremacy automatically translates into governance legitimacy. The biggest loser, unmistakably, is the U.S. governance system itself. What it has revealed is a nation of more than 300 million people whose decision-making process can become paralyzed at something as basic as language and self-censorship. Once a state discovers it can continue functioning without fully respecting scientific fact, it begins to construct alternative versions of reality. The result is a sharp rise in governance costs and a decline in the system's ability to correct itself. Data already show a continued drop in America's share of global governance trust, while China's role in global climate governance continues to rise. The BRICS bloc keeps expanding, with its combined economic output now accounting for more than 1/3 of the world total. History offers a reference point. After the 1956 Suez Crisis, it took Britain roughly a decade to recede from global empire to regional power. After the 2003 Iraq War, the erosion of U.S. credibility unfolded over about 4 years. This time, however, the slide from climate denial to open questioning of governance capacity appears to have taken only 18 months. The speed at which systemic resilience is being lost is accelerating. Looking ahead, the United States appears to face several possible paths. The first is a slow decline, similar to the British trajectory. Decades of gradual erosion marked by falling living standards and weakened public services. The second is a sudden rupture, a Soviet moment triggered by internal political or debt crises, leading to rapid dollar depreciation and severe social and economic turmoil. The third is a managed transition, requiring a high degree of bipartisan coordination to achieve a stable adjustment, an outcome that currently appears least likely given the depth of political polarization. Taken together, the indicators suggest the country may already be sliding from the first scenario toward the second. Several warning signals deserve close attention. First, whether separatist movements in places like California or Texas make tangible progress. Second, whether the renminbi's share in international payments and reserves continues to rise rapidly. Third, whether major oil producers such as Saudi Arabia move to price energy exports in non-dollar currencies. Any one of these could act as a catalyst that breaks the current equilibrium. For ordinary people, these macro-level shifts translate into a quieter erosion of security, a restructuring of the job market, and a gradual narrowing of personal freedom. As the United States loses the privileges that come with global leadership, internal social tensions are likely to intensify. Industries dependent on global markets will feel the strain, and individual life choices may be increasingly constrained by higher costs and reduced stability. Ironically, many of the policies intended to preserve American hegemony are accelerating its decline. Populism deepens social fragmentation. Isolationism pushes other countries to seek alternatives, and confrontational rhetoric encourages faster hedging by the rest of the world. It becomes a self-fulfilling cycle. The more anxiously an empire tries to hold on to everything, the faster its control slips away. The coming months will be a critical observation window, closed-door maneuvering at the Davos Forum, the fate of the next U.S. budget package, and the power struggles at the upcoming Global Climate Summit will all reveal how much leverage the United States still retains. At the same time, attention should be paid to whether Chinese climate technologies face political resistance as they enter European markets. This may prove to be a key test of whether global governance is truly shifting direction. Ultimately, this crisis, sparked by a cold wave, represents a sharp footnote in the broader process of global power transition. It is not a contest between left and right, nor is it confined to partisan politics. It is about how power operates based on reality rather than narrative. America's dominance was built on the post-twin World War II Bretton Woods system, the petrodollar arrangement, and decades of technological and military positioning. Today, those pillars are being examined, tested, and gradually dismantled by natural forces, geopolitical rivalry, and the rational choices of states acting in their own interests. Empires do not collapse overnight. They are weakened over decades by countless events that appear minor at the time. The cold wave of the 20th of January, the 26th of May proved to be one such decisive cut. To understand how the world truly works, one must look beyond headlines and public outrage and instead trace the real flows of resources and power. This is not only about the future of the United States, but about how the global order itself will be rewritten. And it all began with an ordinary spell of extreme cold and a word a government was afraid to say out loud.